What's up, guys? I want to introduce you to our sponsor, Carnivore. They're a beef protein isolate that changed the game as an alternative to whey and plant-based proteins. So if you gotta have some lactose, some gut issues, this is definitely the protein you guys want to use. They also have some slamming RTDs. Roger's drinking one right now. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely, guys. For me, it's taste. I've been drinking RTDs for 20 years. Been going to the gym for 20 years. Tried everything under the sun. Carnivore is where it's at. This is the chocolate. I love chocolate. 0 grams of fat, 0 grams of sugar, 0 lactose, 0 gluten. If you have any lactose issues at all, this is where it's at. You want to try Carnivore today. Guys, don't forget 40 grams of protein in this. If you're looking for a clean, great tasting protein, give Carnivore a try today.
Real show, here we go. Real show, here we go. You know that it's gotta be that time, so this is what we chant. What keeps on getting them all amped in advance? Come on. You and I rocking out with Iron Man, FE. You get the general's point of view on top of Roger's rants. We're never tapping out, we're putting the most minutes in. You already know what that's about, you know that winners win. Crush whatever's on task, check the podcast. It's the champ and the tramp, let the bomb blast.
All right, Andrew, I'm coming for you, bro. I'm coming for you. Sorry, bro. Thank you, dude. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Frankie actually figured out. Frankie coming
Look
up
for the answer, dude.
wearing the shirt and everything. Look at that.
So whenever.
Yeah. John, thank you for doing my show, man. You know, I waited till we weren't. I mean, we're still kind of bummy, but I wanted to be a little more professional once I got the best guy behind the mic that I know.
Well, dude, it's an absolute honor to talk to both of you gentlemen. Frankie Edgar calls. You take that call every day of the week. I'm at my twin brother's house. I'm getting out of bed time for my daughters tonight, which is kind of nice. But it's great to see you boys. I'm 8 years into the podcast game, and I don't have a studio nearly as nice. So you guys look buttoned up and ready to go.
This is in my basement. And look, you know, we did all right. We did all right. My wife actually did this.
She did a lot of it. She did, yeah.
Well, I'm in the process of trying to secure a space in South Florida. So as such, I'm kind of between studios trying to either do something at my house, or the issue is, like, if I do something out of my house, Frankie, like you're in your house, right? But if you go to a studio, then the three of us probably sit down in person, right? So that's what I'm battling with right now is, like, do I get the greatest internet in the world at my house and do it at my house? Or do I go to 20 minutes away and Bo Nickel comes and sees me in 2 weeks? You know, that's what I'm grappling with right now. So
can I give you what I think? I think I would love to have you on my couch here, you know, much more than on Zoom. I think that's the best bet. If you can get in front of them, to me, it just makes the conversation flow better. You know, the awkwardness goes away.
A little more personal too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually built this studio originally, John, and then Frankie's wife Renee found like a water leak or mold or something and completely gutted the entire room, tore it down, and had it rebuilt herself in a week.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Unbelievable. No, it looks great. And I've been following you guys from afar. It's like I feel like I know your children, both of you guys, right? Because of social media. So it's good to be able to chop it up with you guys amidst this crazy UFC circus, you know, that has become my life.
Yeah, man, that is quite the work schedule. How is that? How like what's the hard? I mean, I know the answer to this. What's the hardest thing about that?
Well, you know, we have 28 fighters this weekend, right? So Trevor Peak was a guy that I did a deep dive on today, right? But it's like, how much time am I devoting to each individual athlete, right? As I get ready to call their fight, never mind everything else that encompasses the job, right? The television formatics that I won't bore you with, right? But every little locker room shot of Frankie Edgar that we're trying to maximize before he comes out there, right? Oftentimes that stuff is written, and it's written by me, and it's written during fight week, likely the night before the show. So never mind all of that. My biggest focus, my biggest anxiety is fighter preparation. And, you know, these fucking guys, Mick Mader and Sean Shelby, in a COVID-19 climate, they're giving me 15 fights, right? 30 fighters, right? So if you give every fighter 45 minutes or an hour, you guys do the math, it's a lot. And sometimes you want to give them more than that. So it's the devil, I know, but it's an 8-hour broadcast oftentimes with 30 fighters in a week. And I don't know that I'll ever maximize myself in this role, right? I don't know that we'll ever have a perfect show, but I really do try to be as prepared as humanly possible, even like for the fighter meetings on Wednesday, right? I got to walk in there and make sure that, you know, if a guy has changed states or training camps, that I'm not in the dark on that stuff. So I take it very seriously, perhaps too seriously, but it's the devil I know, and I have the job I want. I'm just trying to fucking keep it,
I mean, it shows. The work you put in shows. I mean, I see that notebook you carry around with you, and yeah, I mean, you're the standard. I think across all sports, you're the guy.
Well, thank you, buddy. It's a privilege. It really is, right? Like I'm not a lifelong martial artist. I hated jujitsu. Sorry, Pahumpa, I'm never coming back. He thinks I'm coming back. So if he listens to Champ and the Tramp, then I'm never coming back. But no, it's a tremendous challenge, but it's also like a tremendous responsibility and one that I'm so happy to be entrusted with, right? Like, obviously, I think I cut my teeth the right way in terms of being the number 2 guy for the UFC on the play-by-play side and going to Brazil 27 times and learning the bottom half of the roster and doing it the right way. And so when it came time for me to call the championship fights, I think I was ready. And those are big moments that need to withstand the test of time. And although I don't plan what I'm going to say, I want to make sure that I elevate the moment and don't take away from it. So, yeah, I mean, it's, there aren't a lot of dinners and there aren't a lot of whiskeys during these fight weeks, because there's a lot to fucking do.
A lot to do, a lot to forget.
Well, that's why I write everything down. I mean, people say, "Oh, you're calling Frankie's fight. You didn't need to prep Frankie." It's like, dude, I don't remember what I did yesterday. Never mind exactly when he knocked down all of these people and when that all happened, right? So, like, if I was calling Frankie's fight, right now, I would watch his last fight to be sure, and then I rewrite his fighter card so that a lot of his UFC history and things that maybe he said to me in past fighter meetings or conversations, that stuff is more committed to memory because I'm handwriting it all out so that when he's fighting, right, Frankie's style is such, I don't have a lot of time to fucking look down at my notes. He's moving around like the Energizer Bunny, right? So I got to commit some of that stuff to memory. And my way of doing that is during fight week, obviously, to handwrite it all in this exhaustive process that has become sort of a system over the years.
Yeah, I've seen you highlight that on your Instagram, talking about the notes. You have, a cue card basically on every fighter. So you use that same cue card, you just add to it if as a fighter has a new fight coming up. Is essentially.
No, I make a new card for every single fight, and that's really the process that helps. Well, I happen to have them right here. But yeah, so like Trevor Peek, I've never called this fight before, and I know some people are just listening to your show, but on the video side, this is the Trevor Peek fight card. And so today, this kid, I mean, good Southeasterner, he just has a lot of good quotes. And, he was like a wild, visionless kid and like one of the greatest street fighters in UFC history. I mean, you guys would appreciate this kid, like tons of street fights, first time he ever fought. Chattanooga, Tennessee he's an Alabama kid. But basically the first time he competed, 15 years old, it was an unsanctioned event. He thought it was a street fight. And, it ended up being an event, but no, I enjoy like a lot of that process, but no, yeah, I cheat off the old notes, Raj, but I don't use that card. I create a new card for every single fight.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand how much you put into it. Ever feel like you're at a disadvantage? I didn't know you trained at all. I just heard you shout out. I think you said you're jiu-jitsu coach, but I mean, obviously the panel up there with you, it's the who's who of fighter. You got Bisbee, you got Rogan trains. Obviously, he's not a professional fighter, but trains. Ever feel like you're at a disadvantage in just knowing, submissions or holds, or you ever feel like you're at a disadvantage, or you're just very confident that you're so well researched?
No, I think that's a great question. Very much at a disadvantage and always will be analytically, right? I mean, there are guys who are still like, I'm not an analyst, Roger, right? I'm a play-by-play guy. Now, sometimes that line in MMA is blurred a little bit and you'll hear me editorialize, right? Like analysts aren't even supposed to be calling out jabs or strikes necessarily. That would be the play-by-play guy. And then those guys explain what the hell is happening. I remember my first time calling fights for the UFC 2011-12. And, Craig Borsari and Dana White are basically like, when the fight hits the canvas, just shut the fuck up and let the analysts take over. And that's really the message, right? Because as good as I could get, right, even if I had some goal to become a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt or even to get some stripes on my white belt, right, I wouldn't be leaning into that, right? I would be leaning away from that just because that's not what my role is. And I've always tried to stay in my lane. And even though I've accrued a lot of knowledge over the years, especially when it comes to the striking game, I took boxing lessons for a year and a half back in the day, but I'm not necessarily paid to give that type of knowledge or impart that type of stuff, even if I feel plenty confident. Sometimes you might even hear me ask a question rhetorically in a clinch situation. What's he trying to do here? I might know the answer, but I'm speaking to an audience that's ever changing, and our fan base, I feel like, turns over every 3 or 4 years. So Yeah, I try to stay in my lane, but yeah, I'll always know my place, right? I always know that I'll be at a disadvantage, and that is fine with me.
You're complimentary towards the stuff though, in that way, a little bit of you give some energy to the show, to the broadcast. I feel like you keep guys together, especially there's some like I'm not you're not gonna rat nobody out or something, but there's definitely some egos up there.
Yeah.
You can see it. I mean, I'm not gonna say names, but you could see it happening. You could hear it happening during fights, and
Yeah.
it's like you do a good job of being like the middleman in that.
Well, thank you, buddy. I can always control my energy, so I appreciate you saying that, right? Because as poor as I may feel, or if I don't feel particularly thoughtful with my words on a given night, I can always control my energy. But yeah, bro, a lot of different personalities in that broadcast booth. It's sort of untraditional, right? I probably worked with 15, 16 different combinations over the years. And, I think at times I pine to have more of a regular broadcast team. I certainly wish Rogan would do all the pay-per-views and meet me in Vancouver, but I understand why he doesn't necessarily do that at this stage of his life and career, and power to him. When Joe's in the booth, it adds a totally different dynamic, and I think it heightens and elevates the whole show. And I think most rooms would agree with that, and he's still absolutely on top of his game. I think he's having more fun, if I can say that, than he's ever had before. But yeah, man, it's massaging a lot of different personalities. And if you think about me, I'm oftentimes the oldest man in the room these days, right? But think about me, my second year with the UFC, getting a call on short notice to work UFC 155 with Joe Rogan. I got called, yes, filling in on 3 days notice, and I wouldn't call another pay-per-view for 5 years or so thereafter. Right. But, not that I was freaking out, I was much more freaking out when I had the chance to do a college football game on 10 days notice in 2015, when I couldn't name fucking 10 college football players. Call me for the NFL. I'm good. College football assignment was really tough, but no, I was a little bit, freaking out. I had interactions with Joe, and it wasn't that I was starstruck per se, but I'm sharing the broadcast space and booth with this absolute legend. And, you just sort of lean into your strengths, and it couldn't have gone much better. And I feel like, we kind of picked up where we left off, however many years later, when we became broadcast partners. But, you just kind of got to deal with all these different situations and booths. And I love all these guys. Like, I have different relationships with all these guys. Oftentimes I say Dom Cruz is probably the guy that I spend the most time with and that I'm closest with on the road. Brian Stan for many years was that guy, and then he fucking left me at the altar. But what a privilege for a guy like me, right? A non-professional athlete, to get the chance to rub shoulders with all these guys.
Yeah. How crazy is it that Joe Rogan, the Fear Factor guy, is at the success level that he's at now? I mean, probably the most listened to guy on the internet right now. You know what I mean? It's insane. And I think he walks that line really well. Joe walks that line. He's kind of middle. He doesn't really pick and choose a side, so we're huge Rogan fans over here, of course.
Yeah. Well, he's highly listenable, right? And oftentimes when people will compliment our work, I just say, well, thank you humbly, because we're just trying to be as listenable as possible over 8 hours, right? We're trying to not get in the way of the fucking live sporting event, truthfully, at the end of the day. And not a show goes by where some fighter or some coach or some fan isn't upset with something that one of us has said. And for me, increasingly, not a podcast goes by where somebody isn't upset. And it's just kind of the nature of the beast. But he has navigated being one of the most famous men in the world so graciously and so gracefully. And his success is not surprising to those who are close to him, right? Like, his words, just his words, complimentary words about me as a broadcast partner have changed my life, right? Like, he has the power to change so many lives with his words and his deeds. And not unlike Dana White, these guys are philanthropic, but they don't scream from the rooftops about every good deed that they do, So yeah, I hope he sticks around forever. I think he'll probably outlast me. We'll see.
I think he's going on record that says when Dana's done, he's done, right? I think that's what he always has said. So
Dana's
I think they're going to be around for a bit. Yeah,
I do too. It's so funny when I read, oh, Rogan, hopefully those guys are around forever. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouths, but those guys obviously stir the drink, and I think they're here for the long haul.
So what's the story? I mean, it's a well told story, but can we see it? Where's the 209 tattoo? Obviously, you lost a bet with it's right on the inside.
Oh, I didn't lose a bet. Careful with the verb. We didn't lose the bet, right? But there it is. So, yeah, we've told
You and Kenny
Yeah.
Florian, I thought, had a bet. So, okay, walk us through it then. How did it happen?
So I've never done any tattoo bet unless it was a tattoo that I wanted to get or could see myself getting, right? The first tattoo bet we did on the Anik and Florian podcast was if Betch Correia beat Ronda Rousey, I was going to get the Brazilian flag tattooed on my body. Now, that wouldn't have been a tattoo for Betch Correia the way the 209 tattoo was for the Diaz brothers, but that would have been a nod to Brazil and my affinity for that country and its people and how many live events I did there in 2013, the year of Vitor Belfort. Like for me, the Brazilian flag would have been a special tattoo, right? So Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz are getting ready to fight. And Nate Diaz, of course, is coming off a vacation. And so, yeah, I was trying to bring attention to the podcast, but I also related very much to the Diaz brothers. Nick was always my favorite fighter. I had always wanted to get a tattoo and, maybe putting something in the air in the morning. And I thought, this is a great idea. We're going to do a tattoo bet on the podcast. So I called Kenny Florian. He thought I was crazy. My wife just thinks I'm an idiot every other day, which is fine. So we did the tattoo bet. Now, keep in mind, I was the number 2 play-by-play at the time. I wasn't even covering this live event. I was going to be watching from home, not even on the desk, right? And nobody listened to my show, right? So I did not think that this was going to surface on Nate Diaz's radar during fight week. And he was going to say, if John Anik, doesn't get a fucking 209 tattoo, I'm going to whoop his little ass. And, he took to Twitter and took exception to me sort of making a prediction on the fight. And that was part of the issue, right? Back then on our show, I was actually picking fights. That's the last fight I've ever gone on record as picking, right? Because my man Craig Borsari called me and, effectively changed the course of history that day. But no, I thought that maybe I was going to get in trouble. And I think at that time, it was probably the most I had ever done to help, push a pay-per-view, so it was a crazy week for me and my family. Once Nate was upset about it, I had determined that I was going to get the tattoo, whether he won or lost. Obviously, it was a better story when he won the fight to actually get the tattoo. But I think it felt a little bit misunderstood at times, and I had to sort of bury the hatchet with Nate. I was pretty anxious for that first encounter with Nate Diaz, right? But I think he understood, and I had a lot of goodwill established with like the Scrap Pack and Gilbert Melendez, so I think they felt like it came from a good place, and here we are several years later. And, as Frankie, my twin brother still believes that I owe the world this FE tattoo. Now we're going to get the tattoo. Maybe I should just say it here and now. We actually almost had an appointment with this fine line tattoo artist in New Jersey. We're actually going to go from New Jersey to New York. Right, exactly. So it was UFC 288 actually in May. But this particular fine line tattoo artist, you got to have all your ducks in the row, boys. And I'm getting ready to call a pay-per-view, and we did not have our ducks in a row. But the FE tattoo, no bet. It's still coming.
That's amazing.
All right.
Nate actually gave you a pass, though, right? Post-fight, he said, you don't have to get it. You got it anyway, right?
Oh, had to. And I wanted the tattoo. Like at the end of the day, if you hook me up to a lie detector, like I don't know if maybe at the time a little bit younger me wanted the attention that came with it or wanted to feel what a tattoo felt like. But I've always I thought getting a 209 tattoo sounded like a fucking great idea. And I still stand behind it, so.
What's your take on Nate outside of the MMA ring? Like he obviously gets in a little bit of trouble out there, loves smacking people. What is your take on? Maybe we don't have to talk about Nate in particular, just fighters in general getting into scraps outside of the MMA forum, outside of the ring.
Yeah, it's a good question.
He seems to be the guy that gets in the most of them. That's why I bring him up.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason why I have this tattoo is because those guys are relatable to whatever degree to a lot of us. And even though I didn't grow up similarly, right, necessarily, right, I think there's a lot of components to the way they go about their business, being the real article, not being afraid to bring cannabis into situations where it was not accepted for years, right? And I think for a lot of us, we were able to relate to that, But I do chalk a lot of this up to self-defense. Yeah, some of it might be street fighting. We just talked about this great street fighter who's fighting in Jacksonville this weekend, but I don't have a huge problem with it. I really don't, and especially if you're talking about like recent footage, Ilya Topuria, who is main eventing this weekend, right, was in an altercation where someone approached him at an arcade and he landed 3 flush right hands, and I'm having a fighter meeting, Raj, with him on Wednesday. Like, am I supposed to ask him about that? Right? Like, is that part of the discourse and the lead up to this fight? Like, hey, what happened in January? Like, I was going to maybe see if my producer wanted to broach it, but it's certainly not at the top of my list. I think the kid deserved to get pounded out.
Yeah.
My thing is, why do people get mad at fighters for fighting? Like, this is what we do. You know,
Right, right, right. I mean,
we did it before the cage.
Agreed.
Probably gonna do it after the
Agreed.
cage. You know.
Agreed.
Yeah, no, what was it? The one, the one Logan Paul looking there, Jake, no, Logan Paul
Yeah,
looking guy.
the look like
He put him out. I mean, dude,
Yeah.
roast him looked like he wanted some business.
yeah.
yeah,
He
yeah,
handled himself.
yeah.
209, baby, come on.
No, I know. Well, and it's funny too because we've talked a lot on our podcast recently about like in Florida, we're always wearing flip flops, right? And I've started to wear sneakers a little bit more just so that I'm ready. Not that I'm any great threat, but I'm more of a threat when I'm wearing fucking sneakers than when I'm wearing flip flops all the time. You know, just ask Drakkar Close, right? Getting pushed by Jeremy Stevens and getting a concussion to it, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me. Even the Joe Schilling thing that is particularly violent. It's like Joe's ready to go, man.
But
Joe's ready to go.
what state was it? Was that in Florida? I think it was in Florida.
Was it? I don't know.
Is it stand your ground state? And
Yeah,
that's
you
why,
might-
that's
yeah,
why
right.
he won.
Yeah.
He won the case. Stand
That's
your
what
ground,
I'm saying. That's what
baby.
I'm telling you. You know, easier to stand your ground in sneakers and flip flops. Joe Schilling
That's
stands his
true.
ground.
This is true.
I think Matt Serra was in flip flops when he was just basically holding the guy down on the ground in the restaurant
That was
there.
in
I think he was in
Vegas.
Vegas,
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
But I think he was in flip flops, if I remember.
Yeah.
Right.
But I would encourage your viewers and your listeners, check out the Ilya Topuria video, right? Because if you've seen this kid, right, he's such a good example of somebody who looks unassuming and handsome and will absolutely murder you if you give him 12 seconds in an arcade, you know? So it was pretty funny. I'll probably bring it up just because of this conversation for you boys on Saturday night.
Oh yeah. So what, you did some fights at Gettysburg, for Rush Week?
Yeah, so we had a tough man competition, which was basically used to draw people into the fraternity. And so my senior year, I got to referee this event, which was a real thrill, I have to say, more thrilling than actually competing as a junior. But yeah, I mean, essentially, I got called out by this 6'2", freshman who smoked like a pack of butts a day, and my lungs weren't necessarily crystal clean, but I definitely had the cardiovascular edge, and I felt like I could outlast him. But whole newfound respect for martial artists and combat sports athletes because that was the most exhausting 9 minutes of my life. So much so that I think that affected change with the format. We went to 2-minute rounds the following year, right? Because round 3 is 2 guys in lacrosse gloves and helmets, I think we were wearing, with our hands on our knees. But yeah, you just try to destroy, and you'd get, very rarely would you get like somebody knocked out cold, right? Because of the lacrosse helmets. But sometimes guys get all cut up with the gear, and it was certainly our most wild event. And yeah, it was my only sort of, unsanctioned competition like that. And we're 1-0, boys. We're 1-1 on the streets. 1-1 on the streets, and then 1-0 in whatever.
Hey, that's a winning record to me.
I think a lot of people don't know. I didn't know until today. You have a twin brother. You mentioned it earlier, but I didn't know that until today. But I tuned into a little bit of his podcast. He says that oftentimes, but he's got the hair. I'm sure you could grow a good head of hair too if he's your twin. But so I guess that's what separates you guys. But he still gets recognized as being you quite often. And does he ever
dumbass people though? That's some dumbass people.
He's got hair.
See you. They see you on Saturday, and then oh my god, he grew hair.
Yeah.
Dude, I gotta say, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson came up to my twin brother in Miami just recently in April and was like, "Bro, I love what you've done with your hair." And it's like, WB, I love you, but do you know how long he hasn't gotten a haircut since Colby Covington, Robbie Lawler in Jersey in 2019. It's been 4 years, But yeah, it's sort of weird, right? Because just as we've gotten older, it seems like we look more alike, even though his hair goes down to his ass and I, by choice, shave my head every 2 or 3 days. But I think as we get older, we're almost aging similarly and look even more alike. So, gosh, man, everywhere we go now, the identical twin thing is something that we have to deal with much more than I have to deal with, like being a public figure. It's like people think the twin thing is weird, and it fucking is. Like monozygotic identical twins like us, like it is weird. Like even someone like Joe Rogan, who's seen it all, when he sees me and my brother together with the same mannerisms and acting the same, having the same responses, if you guys had him on next week, you'd be like, we did this already, I'm a little tougher, obviously, you can see, but no, I mean, yes, I could grow a full head of hair. It's funny because, with Rogan and DC, they oftentimes, the 3 eggheads and whatever else. But yeah, I mean, we could grow a full head, but we like that high and tight, like Frankie had.
You ever play any tricks on teachers or chicks?
No, because I mean, it was almost like, well, you could get like, it'd be like, yeah, I could go into his Spanish class, right? And they would have no clue, but it's like, then I'm sitting in a Spanish class, right? And what am I doing here? Right. So we could, but the girls always would know a mile away. And, as I said, I got a little bit harder exterior, even though there are a lot of similarities. I feel like back then I was, I don't know. I was trying to be a tough guy. I was wearing like, Jinko jeans and big starter jackets and bandanas on my head and listening to hip hop and freestyle rapping every minute I could. Like I don't know. I was, had an interesting few years there in my formative years in high school. So I don't know.
Boston, right? You grew up in Boston?
Yeah. Metro West Boston area. But yeah, I was born in the city and, yeah, I lived the first 31 years of my life in Massachusetts. So,
Wow. You're a Boca guy now.
gosh, that sounds awful, right? It's like, takes you like 75 minutes to get a pack of gum at CVS because the average age is like 71. No, I mean, I do feel like eventually we'll end up in the Northeast. Like we never thought we would raise kids in Florida. And, I hate to say it's like culturally vacant, but I just went on a trip where I was in my home city of Boston and then I went to Vancouver and then you come back to South Florida and it just doesn't feel like the place that I'm going to raise my kids long term. So, my wife's from Connecticut, New York, and obviously my roots are Northeastern. So as much as I hate the snow and the cold and as soft as I am, I do think eventually we'll make our way back up there.
There you go.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, no,
I think about going south sometimes.
No, I mean, we're talking out of both sides of our mouths, but no, I don't know, man. It's just like South Florida after a while. It's just Miami Heat people everywhere. I just got to get the fuck out of here,
I feel like the South Florida, East Coast of Florida, it's just Jersey but hot. You know what I mean?
No,
Most
it
of the
is.
people from New York, New Jersey, East Coast, and down there just hot now. And because it's packed as hell down there too.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, there's a lot of Jersey and Boston and New York flair down here. But I will say, even though we're in June and you can go to the beach almost anywhere, like my wife and I went to the beach today for 45 minutes, right? And in Florida, that's something you can do year round. And it's a tremendous luxury. We lived in Vegas for a while. So to now have that luxury and to not be landlocked is a pretty great thing. And yeah, you're right. I mean, I probably wouldn't last too long if we went back to the Northeast, but I think that tug will always be there.
Yeah. Something about it.
Yeah.
And you don't hear the Boston accent now at all. You got work on that?
Sometimes I'll let it bleed on the broadcast a little bit. But yeah, we got UFC 292 coming up on August 19th. So we'll see if we can't drop a few TD Gardens on them. But no, I mean, I didn't grow up with my dad's from Seaford, New York, right? So I grew up with one New York accent in my house, and then my mother didn't have much twang. But my dad still to this day talks like a New Yorker. But I guess I just wasn't surrounded by a lot of people who spoke with that accent. So I didn't necessarily pick it up. But certainly when I drink, it comes out. And there are plenty of people who.
Oh, something happened. I don't know if that was.
Sorry, it looked like I got muted for a second.
No, you got.
There are people who will be like, "Oh, I hear your Boston accent." I'm like, "Well, you don't know a fucking Boston accent because I don't fucking talk with one, But I can turn it on. That's one accent that I can turn on if I have to. And when people say they don't like it, then we just
turn it up.
You were in the movie Warrior.
Yes. In 2010 or 11, it was a few days before my wedding. So I sent my poor wife to Massachusetts by herself so I could be in the movie. But yeah, it was a tremendous thrill to get the script and know that like our show MMA Live was going to be used as a conduit through which to advance the story in the movie. So we would have more than one scene. And yeah, it was really cool, man. It was really cool. It was a little bit more cool than Roadhouse, 11 or 12 years later when they called my number again, But yeah, it's always neat to be able to do things like that. And
so Roadhouse.
Yeah.
When does that come out?
Hold up.
I don't know. We filmed it at UFC 285 in March, I believe.
I seen that, and I just how's Roadhouse and UFC? You know what I'm saying? I don't get it.
So I'm getting a little bit older, right? So it was happening during like the same time that a ceremonial weigh-in was happening. So I see these athletes being delayed to whatever degree, and I'm like losing my mind a little bit about, to hell with the movie. Let's get these athletes in and out of here. And thankfully the UFC recognized that and they flipped the script on Hollywood and got the athletes to the stage. And then we filmed the movie. But no, I mean, there's just a lot that goes into these UFC pay-per-views. So I wasn't necessarily in the right mental space when I was filming the movie. And, there were certain things, I guess, the night after when Jake Gyllenhaal is in the octagon and they're staging this scene, right? And I'll harken back to Warrior, right? Some of the issue with Warrior was the glorification of the violence and staging things in MMA, ground and pound, that is so glorified and so superficially beyond anything that would happen in an octagon, that go so far beyond a referee stoppage. And then in Roadhouse, right? Like Jake Gyllenhaal gets pulled off by Chris Tognoni in the movie, and then he goes back in. So Jay Haran goes out on a stretcher, right? So Jake Gyllenhaal does something in this movie that would essentially get him a lifetime ban in mixed martial arts. So as an MMA guy, I'm hoping that that's not in the movie, So I don't know. Whereas Warrior, I was just like so excited. Whereas when Roadhouse happened, I was excited for John Jones at UFC 285, And I say that with all due respect to the great crew and cast, and I hope they put my scene in the movie. But it was a lot. It was a lot.
I did a Kickboxer 2. I played a commentator on Kickboxer 2, and they filmed it in the middle of World Series of Fighting fight.
Oh, yeah.
Marlon fought. I went quartered Marlon and then put my suit on and did a scene. And then they let the fights go back on.
You make me want to go watch Kickboxer too.
I don't know if you.
What do you guys?
Not that good.
So obviously you guys are in the business. What do you think the best MMA movie of all time is? Does Warrior make the list?
Yeah,
I think Warrior was great.
Yeah.
Man.
So I was going to ask you guys that question when you brought up Warrior, because there was a sequel written, but the movie didn't do particularly well. Yes, Nick Nolte, I believe, won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, but the movie, relative to Lionsgate's expectations, I don't think it did great. But the sequel was ready to go, so I'm glad you acknowledged it as a great movie. I thought it was great,
Yeah, big time actors. It was cool.
Yeah.
What else? What other movies?
What was the one? I believe it's boxing, not MMA. But the guy, he always puts his head down. He says, "Top of the head, hardest the old man's."
Gladiator.
Gladiator was another
classic.
That was a good one.
Was great.
Yeah, I mean,
Cuba
Raging
Gooding
Bull.
Jr. was in.
Raging Bull's probably my favorite combat sports movie, but
oh no way!
Power?
No way.
Yo,
John, you there?
Yeah, I hear you guys.
holy shit!
I think the power just went out.
A little power surge.
Yeah.
Power surge or power go out? The power came right back on if it went out.
I got a generator.
Oh, generator. We're on generator power, I think, now.
Look at this guy. I mean, look at the future UFC Hall of Famer, Frankie Edgar. Hey, Frankie, you got your Hall of Fame speech ready yet? Probably not, but you better get cracking.
Yeah, I definitely don't. Don't.
As nervous as any combat sports athlete could get for a fight. You guys can hear me, right?
Yep.
We're back.
That setting before you go out to accept your Hall of Fame induction, right? Like Dustin Poirier accepted like a Toyo Tires Community Service Award last year, right? And even that, I think, was nerve-inducing for him, right? Never mind you going up there with all your kids and I'm not trying to like psych you out or anything, but it's a huge well, bro, I'm doing it, but I'm doing it to myself, right? Because like I'm moving a mile a minute in my head all the time, right? And I got to do this Hall of Fame. I got to host this thing once a year. And it's like totally out of my comfort zone. I have to slow my whole cadence down, right? I'm reading a teleprompter. I'm in this big hall. I'm in like a black tie outfit, right? And even for me, dude, like I've been doing this for 20 years and I get up in front of this Hall of Fame podium and it's like, fuck, not this again. It's a crazy week. It really is. But no, I'm thankful to do the Hall of Fame thing. It's outside my comfort zone and it helps me develop skills and it helps give me confidence like going into the rest of the weekend. But no, it'll be great to have you up there whenever when they call your number.
Obviously, right, we all know Frankie's going to be in it. I mean, it kind of just goes, but how does that work? Walk me through that. Do you get a call one day? Does Dana pick up the phone and be like, "Hey, buddy, welcome to the,"
I don't know. I don't know.
John, do you know how it works? How does that work?
Well, so I think you've seen some of the reveals, the revelations on broadcast, right? At times when maybe we've given like Jens Pulver, I don't know if you saw that moment where he found out live. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that they would try to, maybe have Frankie at a live event and
well, they just did. And I was thinking to myself, this is going to be it, but it didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, this class is overflowing, but it's an eventuality. I think we all recognize that, so
in time, we'll see.
In time. Yeah. And your speech will be fine. I got plenty of advice for you. Just don't go Uriah Faber 29 minutes and you're good.
Yeah, no, I'll be short and
I'm just
sweet,
kidding.
baby. Come on.
Wait, did he really?
But you see what I mean? How like I say something like that, and then the next thing you know, I fucking wake up to like an MMA website being like Anik smashes Faber's Hall of Fame speech. So no, but it's tricky. It's not like the Oscars where you can tee up some music and escort the guy off the stage, like you deserve the time, right? But you also have to recognize that if you keep it to a quarter of an hour, you can really have the audience by the balls and produce something memorable. When you start to bleed that 15, 20 minutes, you start to lose some people is all.
I think that's the way with almost everything. Best man speech, I think shorter is always better, right? It's never good. When you get long-winded, people just start to zone out.
Well, I asked Joe Rogan once, how do you determine how long you're going to do a podcast? And he can end it at any time, right? So if you're one of the guys who's been on his show and it's been a shorter episode, don't take that as an insult necessarily, right? But he can end the show at any time. Like, I don't know how you guys do your show, and hopefully we're still entertaining the fuck out of the masses at this stage of the program, but we are mindful of that on our show, right? Like we would, generally speaking, if you're doing a thesis statement, we'd rather keep them wanting more than sit there and pontificate for 2 or 3 hours, but to each his own.
Yeah.
Do you get asked to speak at like any speaking engagements or anything like that?
Not really. I certainly would love to, go back to some of the institutions that I've attended if I had the chance at some point in time. I taught at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting for a time, and I absolutely love that. But no, not a lot of speaking opportunities necessarily. I don't have a ton of time schedule-wise to do that stuff. And they, when you're taking a fee, you better fucking prepare too. Like you take that shit really seriously. And like I'll tell you guys, like we never had a writer for many years for like this Hall of Fame induction ceremony. It's the only thing I do all year in which I have a writer that helps me with that process. So yeah, it's great. Oh, it's incredible, right? I mean, using the English language in such a profoundly effective way with all these words it's cool when you can make somebody else's words your own. And I do edit the final script, but am I allowed to reveal the ghostwriter? I probably can't. The ghostwriter.
Your delivery is always perfect. Whoever helps you, it's the delivery that gets the recognition, I think,
I had a really embarrassing moment on that Hall of Fame podium several years ago. I made the mistake of drinking a cold beverage backstage, and I was trying to introduce Dan Henderson when his fight with Shogun Rua was being inducted, and my vocal cords froze, and the music guy saved me. But it's a pretty embarrassing moment on UFCFightPass.com if you want to check it out. I'm completely choking. I can't get Dan Henderson out. And I went down a rabbit hole that night of like what you can and can't have for your voice. And no, in that setting, like I always feel like I'm just capable of just fucking brutalizing it because it's just formal and stuffy and serious, and I'm okay with that. But it's just a very different tone than we're normally striking.
Now, we were talking a little while ago about Nate, the 209 tattoo, and you knew at some point you were going to have to interview him. How about Colby Covington? Because that guy's also said some things. I mean, first of all, I think it's, pretty much conclusive at this point that the guy is, he's playing a role. But talk some shit. I think he said something to the effect of, "You live in Boca now. I live in Miami. I'm not that far away. You can get it," or something like that. Have you seen Colby? Have you interviewed him since that whole thing? And does he play the part, or before you guys go into the interview, does he say, "Hey, listen, man, I want to," does he tell you it's an act, or does he play it up?
So some great questions. I'm very curious to see how the next fighter meeting with Colby Covington will go. I have every expectation that he will afford me the opportunity of that fighter meeting. And yeah, when he came out and said something to the effect of, my kids were going to grow up without a dad or something, I didn't think much of it because, to your point, he was playing a role. But I did have to pursue a conversation with him because ultimately at the end of the day, it's about the professional athletes. It's not about me. And I don't say that to gain fans, but I needed to make sure that I hadn't said something that was off-putting to him, right? Yes, I was supporting Bilal Muhammad's candidacy, but not because he hosts a podcast with my twin brother, because he's the rightful number one contender. I've supported hundreds upon hundreds of fighters on this roster over the years to varying degrees, and that's what I am paid to do. So yes, I believe he was playing a role, and I think that there have been times since where I have been asked about that, and maybe at times I've leaned into the back and forth a little bit. For the most part, I very much lean out of it. I mean, we barely addressed it on our show, right? But were he to take issue with something that I've said since and not grant me that fighter meeting, I can still do my job and go call the fight, but it doesn't look great to my bosses. Like if a high profile fighter like that isn't willing to do the fighter meeting with me. So hopefully he'll give me that chance. But yeah, I'm not too worried about any harm coming my way.
Yeah. I mean, for Colby's sake, because you can't take away that the guy's an amazing fighter. I mean, nobody can say he's not, but I hope there is a grand reveal for that dude one day where he says,
what do you mean grand reveal? What do you mean grand reveal?
This guy.
He's giving me things.
I like the grand reveal.
When his career maybe is over, he says, "Hey, listen, man, it was all an act." You know what I mean? Because he's like the most hated guy there is, and he said things that, listen, I get it. I get playing a role. I get all that. I get hype in a fight. I know, Muhammad Ali was one of the best to ever do it, but like he crosses lines that I don't understand. The pulling religion and children, and
right.
I don't understand it. I think it goes beyond just playing an act. But
no, of course. And some of my supporters, Raj, don't like the fact that maybe I take the stance that I do. And candidly, the first time I saw what he said, it was like a transcript, right? And my wife saw the transcript, but then when my wife saw him say it and saw the venom with which he said it, maybe that struck a different chord. But yes, he's playing a role unequivocally. Yes, he's gone too far at times. Does he move internal metrics? Is he some big star? Evidently so, because he hasn't competed a lot and he's still going to get a championship opportunity. And even me saying that way, might strike some sort of chord with him, but I just think he absolutely needs to fight. I don't know if you're ever going to get that sort of grand reveal. I will tell you guys, our fighter meetings with him are fantastic. He's always more than willing to give us as much time as we want. He's always on time, thoughtful with his answers. It's technical, it's tactical, right? It's revealing. So we see that side of Colby Covington. I may never see that side of him again, just given recent things that have happened. But we get the real article in those fighter meetings. We see that other side of it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Conor McGregor, obviously very much in the news lately. I'm not sure how that's all going to play out, but is he back in USADA pool testing now, or what's the deal with him?
I think he was supposed to report to the last one. He didn't. So, at least what I read, he's not going to be able to fight this year.
So the Chandler fight won't happen this year.
Well, there are exceptions that can be granted, but it's certainly looking less so with every passing day. And I just think big picture, it's just tremendously frustrating because this is a man who very badly wanted to compete against Frankie Edgar back in the day. This man is driven by competition. And I'm not trying to make any excuses for the guy, but had that broken leg not happened, I can assure you this guy would have been on a different track and hopefully in a regular competition cycle. Like as we sit here and talk in June of 2023, it's very sad that this is the reality. And there's so many different things that have happened that seemingly could get in the way of him getting back to what he does best. Like he has one win at 155 pounds in the UFC, his best fucking weight class, right? He has one win at 55 in his UFC career against Eddie Alvarez, right? Never even had an extended run at lightweight to see how good he could be in that division. It was super fights and Mayweather and 170 pounds. And, as right as maybe I've been on some things in my career, boy, was I wrong. I thought Conor McGregor was going to compete a lot more. And I don't know, man. I'm hoping that things turn around and he, backs up all the words with action in terms of competing 3 or 4 times in a year. But I don't know. Not ideal right now, boys.
Yeah, he just made such a name for himself. He put together big money fights. I don't think he ever chased a weight class per se,
No, and that's fair. I guess I'm just sort of hearkening back to a lot of things that I've heard him say just about his own MMA legacy and his own mixed martial arts quest. And I guess when you get to a point that you're a borderline billionaire, it's like, I understand that goals change and things change. And you're right to point that out, not necessarily about the weight class. I guess I just feel like it's a microcosm of some of the underachievement that now defines his career. Yes, you can never take away the double champ thing, right? But championship fight wins in the UFC, how many of those you win are really telling. And I don't know, I just expected more because I felt like that, he'd enjoy his retirement more if he really had more UFC wins and fights. I don't know.
Laurels, some more laurels.
Yeah.
Defend the belt. Defend one of those
Right,
belts at one
right,
point.
right.
I don't think they even defended those King of the Cage belts. Got
Right,
it,
yeah,
ran.
right,
Got the
right.
treasure and ran.
Yeah, and man, I've just been wrong. I've just been wrong when it comes to Connor. And again, the broken leg's a huge factor, right? I mean, look at how long it's taken Chris Weidman to get himself right. And it's a really sad thing, but I do have a lot of what if questions for what would happen, if Connor had just lost a clean decision to Dustin that night, what would the rest of his year held? We'll never know.
How crazy is it that Weidman breaks Anderson Silva's leg, and then years later it happens to Weidman? You know what I mean? And kind of the career is obviously
Matrix
after
was
that
broken,
was never
bro.
the same.
Yeah, I mean, we got Frankie Edgar in retirement fucking falling out of cages, but at least he didn't break a leg,
Hey, I'm falling out of cages. You're falling off chairs. Come
Yeah,
on, what
oh,
are we doing here?
That's right. That's right.
I mean, did I set myself up for that one, huh? My goodness. Yeah, that was not ideal. My mom needs new chairs. My mom, like she's on the elliptical every day. I don't consider her to be like elderly, but when she's trying to repair this fucking chair, I'm like, Mom, you gotta let the chair go. It's snapped in half. We gotta just, RIP to the chair. Yeah, but that was crazy. I was filming my podcast yesterday, and the chair just completely went out. My core was not strong enough to keep me upright, I guess.
Hey, tried.
How long have you been doing your podcast, John?
8 years. And we were told in April of 2015 when we launched that there were way too many podcasts and that we shouldn't do it, and we didn't really start making money on it until this year, right? Kenny Florian for probably 6 or 7 years. Him and his wife probably cursing me before bed that he's devoting a big chunk of his Monday to this show and it's not bringing in any money, but we were committed to the content and, sounds trite, but like that's the best way for me to give back to the fans is to provide free content. And for me, selfishly, it's an outlet to talk when things happen on pay-per-views or otherwise, get some things off my chest. I feel like there's a therapy there for me. But yeah, we just enjoy it. And obviously it's got a Ray Longo segment every week, which is pretty special to us. And yeah, I mean, I call it the little engine that could, right? Still going strong 8 years. And, we'll see what happens. We got Ken Flo on board for another 8. So
yeah. The words, the sentiment is very true of us too here. The Champ the Tramp, we've been 4 years in, and it's there's no quick money in the podcast game, that's for sure. So, but consistency, we always say, is key. And we show. You said Monday, we're here every Tuesday. So
no, that's what it's about. And the part of the reason why we were delayed even 6 or 8 months is getting Kenny Florian back then to commit to 1 day a week. That like we do once we commit, once we start, like it's every fucking week until you quit. And Ken Flo's no quitter, so here we are. But yeah, there were times, right, where I'm wondering why I'm taking so much time away from my family when I'm already away 100 nights a year. And I had a lot of answers to those questions, but they certainly weren't green answers,
what's the reason Rogan doesn't do international anymore? He only does states, right? Only does states.
Yeah, Joe. Yeah, Joe. No, he he told me. Well, I think that's part of it. It might be bank account driven as well. I certainly need the money from these UFC shows if I can say that. But no, I felt like we got him to commit on the air after Leon Edwards beat Kamaru Usman in Salt Lake City that he would do that third meeting in London, and then he had a comedy show or some sort of commitment. He's a man in demand, and the internationals take a lot out of you physically, and they take a lot of time to travel to, right? Oftentimes Bruce Buffer can be in and out. Sometimes selectively Rogan can be in and out, but it's hard to be in and out with the internationals. For me, I'm going on Tuesday or Wednesday almost regardless. But yeah, I think just part of it is how long it takes to get there, and it takes him away from all of his other initiatives. But I am continuing to push that with him and hoping that selectively for big fights that he'll be there. Like I don't think we get him to Abu Dhabi if we didn't get him to Fight Island during COVID, but I think eventually we'll get him back to Europe.
Yeah. Has he got you doing the cold punch? This guy's heavy into it over here.
I think eventually I'll suck it up, but I believe I told you earlier how soft I am when it comes to the cold, so I just don't know. I did put a sauna in my house because we had just a good space for it. So I have the old school Finnish sauna that we try to go in a few times a week. So at least we're doing something.
I've done the cold plunge with Frankie, but these guys, I know Rogan's thing is doing it first thing in the morning, which to me is like that's got to be the most brutal time. This guy's now doing it like 7 o'clock every morning. This guy,
I love it. I love it. It's I for the longest time, I had the cold plunge. I would do it at nighttime after the sauna, and honestly, I kept saying I want to do it in the morning, but I just didn't have the fucking guts to do it. And now I've been doing it. And now it's like I'll try to talk myself out of doing it, and I end up talking myself into doing it. Like I'm like addicted to it.
It's amazing. I feel like I could get
It's like these fucking dorks. I always telling people to jump in the fucking ice stuff, but it's actually pretty damn invigorating, you know?
No, and I think when I hear about what it can do for the mental, it definitely sounds intriguing to me. And I can totally see how there could be an addictive component to it.
Yeah.
If you do it long enough,
Yeah. John, what I heard you had what was your best job before you got into broadcasting?
My best job. So the most rewarding job I had, I taught autistic kids for a long time. In the summers, I would teach the preschoolers. And then after college, I worked as a vocational coordinator. So I would like be charged with getting autistic teenagers jobs. And then I would be their job coach on site. Dude, when I got fucking Brian Kenny a job at Blockbuster Video, like puffing my chest out, like, dude, I got that kid a fucking job at Blockbuster Video. He was the best video game putter awayer in the history of Blockbuster Video, So that was particularly gratifying. I had one student fired from Shaw's Supermarket in Sharon, Massachusetts, because he fucking took the ground beef and just let it have it. But that was my labor of love. Like I always say that if there was money in like being with special needs kids, like that's what I'd be doing. But I was always afraid to be poor. I couldn't pay my rent in Newton, Massachusetts in 2003. And I was driven by that fear. And that's what drove me from newspapers to radio to television. I never wanted to be on television. I was going to be a newspaper writer, and then it's like $15 a story. Like, so I don't have anything foundationally or philanthropically that's like a big organization. I donate to, cancer charities, children's, things like that. But if I were ever to undertake anything other than like father's rights, it would be something relating to autistic children. So maybe I'll get back to that at some point in time. And, I fucking slung plates at Pizzeria Uno and Legal Seafoods and all that.
Two questions for you, John. I think you already answered the one. Who's your favorite fighter? I believe you said Nick Diaz. Maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit. Where do you think the best fighters come from in the world? Like, where's the best training? Is it the U.S. or is it Kazakhstan now? Or
Kazakhstan.
Not Kazakhstan. Dagestan.
So, well, I would say like I would tell people on ESPN.com probably 15, 20 years ago when we're doing a chat, like just go watch Nick Diaz, Paul Daly, watch that 1-round fight and tell me what you think about MMA, right? So, yeah, Nick, I mean, people get upset when I put Charles Oliveira on a pedestal right now as if I'm not some massive Islam Makhachev fan as well. But like hard to argue with what Charles Oliveira has done. And I will continue to bang that drum because, gosh, man, like the accomplishments are just absurd. Like he's just fought all these guys and has all these big scalps on his resume. So what was the other part of your question?
Where do you think the best fighters or the best training is in the world?
United States of America. Okay. Just go look at UFC history, right? Daniel Cormier loves this stuff, right? Stars and stripes. Now, I think there is a lot to be gained from Brazil, certainly when it comes to jiu-jitsu. I certainly think that city kickboxing has emerged as a place where even someone like Ian Gary desires to go to New Zealand to see what is in the water down there. It's just hard to argue with that type of success. Certainly what Russia has done in terms of building a foundation, right? If you were to bet on one country to produce a lot of champions in the not too distant UFC future, I think Russia is a country that I would bet on, Poland maybe as well. But look what the United States of America has accomplished in UFC history. Frankie Edgar, a huge part of that, right? I mean, don't make me sing the fucking Star Spangled Banner. I hope all of your listeners will go to Wikipedia as I have done, right? Because I wanted to know, and I couldn't believe the American success, particularly in the UFC, so much so that I sent this along to Daniel Cormier. So, yeah, USA, baby. People come here.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. They all come here to train, bro. They
Yeah.
all come here to train. You know what I'm saying? Come on.
You put
No,
up,
right.
you put up most of the Dagestan guys.
Yeah, I did. I had quite a few in my condo.
Yeah, no, it's I do think sometimes like patriotism is a little bit lost in this country. Certainly when it comes to, I mean, I often wish that we would do a national anthem before these UFC live events, because when we're in Brazil, they let that thing go. And now it's not part of our live event though, right? So it's like Rogan's not even out there yet. I mean, he's not in Brazil, right? But I'm out there pretty early, right? Like Buffer's not out there. Buff's waiting for a crowd so he can come out and have his fucking moment, But yeah, I love the Brazilian national anthem, and I just think, sometimes like all of a sudden I'm hearing like USA chants, and I'm like, oh, that's nice, to cheer on the American UFC fighter. Heaven forbid,
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, we're very lost as a country right now. I don't want to get into that, but we got to get back to that. Some more patriotism. We definitely need that. So it's scary time. You're a dad of 3. I'm a dad of 2. This guy's got 3, and things need to change for our children for sure.
Yeah, it's yeah, man, it's a crazy time to be bringing kids into this world. I just had, a nice little battle with my daughter before I came over here with you boys. It's an interesting navigation just in terms of some of the stuff that's out there, and, wanting to simultaneously like balance your kids' social lives with all the terrible things that come with allowing them to do certain things. So I know you guys, at least I know Frankie's a little bit ahead of me as far as some of that stuff's concerned, but shit's getting real.
It doesn't get easier as it goes. That's for sure. Little problems become big problems. That's what I'm learning.
Yeah.
I have a son that's to be in high school next year.
That's insane.
And he's got his first girlfriend, and it's bananas, man.
It's a beautiful thing, man. I love that kid's lettuce too. It's amazing. You watch these kids grow up though on Instagram, and that I will say of all the, of all the demerits and the negatives, it is cool that, that you can connect and feel like you're connected with other people's families a little bit from afar, even if you haven't met their children, But yeah, my son, I have 2 girls and a boy. My son turns 5 on Friday. He's coming to this event in Jacksonville. He thinks he wants to be like a UFC fighter right now.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's probably not happening, but, he's very excited to come to this show. It's a matinee right in our home state of Florida. It was like the perfect storm. So I'm excited to share that with him. I've never been so excited to have one individual in the building than to have my son at the UFC event. So we're very, very excited for this weekend.
That's amazing.
John, my man, pleasure talking with you.
Dude, we got to do a little cross-promotional business where we have the 2 of you guys on the Anik and Florian podcast. Maybe we'll do it. We'll try to do it out of courtesy to you guys where we'll tape it on a Tuesday. So you guys would be in studio, right?
Yeah, we'll make anything work.
All right. Well, yeah, but get you guys in studio for a half hour, maybe before your show, tape something with us, and then you can fucking do your thing. But thanks for having me. And maybe we'll do something in person in November around that MSG show or something.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'll see you before then, now, for sure.
My man, I might have some new ink with that FE.
Let's go. Let's go.
Thank you, boys.
Appreciate you, John. Thank you so much.